Hey everyone, and welcome to
Alex Unsolved.
Yeah. Today we're going to be counting down count them, four crazy murderers. Ooh, very villainous. Number one we're going to start off with is the Servant Girl Annihilator. He's considered the first technical serial killer in America ever. He's terrorized the cities of Austin, Texas from 1884 to 1885. His victims usually consisted of black, very, very rarely did he have white victims. They were also servants. Typically, the servants were girls, hence the name, of course. He was known for doing things like throwing rocks at passers, mugging the servants in alleyways, assaulting people in their backyards. At one point, he even chased two servant girls into their house and then shot through the window. He hit one of them in the back and paralyzed her, so not cool. Things reached a dramatic climax when two white upper-class women were found dead. This, of course, ignoring all other murders and terrorizations, caused a huge ruckus. The local police even hired multiple outside investigator firms to help catch this killer. The most notable of these is the Pinkerton Detective Agency, which was very big at the time. Eventually the killing stopped and the murder was never caught. However, there are some speculation that the person who committed these crimes was Jack the Ripper, the same person, because he was a cotton merchant. And he confessed to these crimes and some other crimes that he committed in London in a journal of his. Pretty plausible to me. But really what made this killer so special was not his anonymity, nor the way he killed, nor who he killed. It was that he was the first killer in recorded history who killed simply for pleasure. He just killed because he wanted to, because he did what he wanted. This is big news at the time.
Number 3, Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was arguably one of Wisconsin's most famous serial killers. Between the years of 1978 and 1991, he would go on to murder 17 young boys in a most brutal fashion. Growing up, Dahmer is said to have had a fairly normal childhood. Yet in his late teens, he would develop some repressed antisocial tendencies and had a habit of examining small animal carcasses and excessive drinking. After graduating from high school, he would kill his first victim, Stephen Hicks. He would take his body, pulverize it, and scatter the remains around his backyard. And even though Dahmer wouldn't kill again for another 9 years, he would still get into plenty of trouble. Around this time, Dahmer would frequent gay establishments where he would drug and rape men he had knocked out. For this, he was put on probation and given a work sentence. Beginning in 1987, Dahmer would begin his gruesome practice of luring younger men into his home for the purposes of booze and sex, where he would then kill them in spite of the regular visits from his probation officer. He then raped many of them, as well as taking great care to preserve their parts, and occasionally even eating them. Dahmer really picked up his killing in 1981, adding almost a victim a week by the year 1991. On one occasion, a lobotomized victim left unattended even made it out into the street to ask several bystanders for help. When Dahmer returned, however, he successfully convinced the police that the irrational young man was simply his intoxicated boyfriend. The officers failed to run a background check that would have revealed Dahmer's sex offender status, allowing him to narrowly escape his fate for a little while longer. His last victim was Tracy Edwards, who would be lured in by Dahmer but managed to escape in the ensuing fight and get assistance from the police. Upon investigating the scene of the crime, they found an altar in his closet with skulls, a heart in his fridge, as well as countless other body parts and pictures of dead young boys. Dahmer was tried for 15 counts of murder, and despite his insanity plea, he would be given life in prison. While in prison, he would be stabbed by his fellow inmates while cleaning a shower. And so ends the tale of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Next on our list is Ed Gein. Ed Gein was a famous serial killer from Wisconsin, again, who is theorized to have done his first killing in 1944, at the age of 38. His victim was his own brother. Gein was known to have idolized his mother, someone whom his brother constantly argued with, especially around this time period, which is why people think that he killed him. The year after this, his mother died. This shook Gein to his very core, being so invested into his mother that he was.
Mama's boy.
Yes, extremely so. He basically started shutting off rooms in his house to preserve the way that they were when she was alive, and they were kind of like shrines to him. Eventually, Gein took a new fascination to the female physique. He satisfies this desire by robbing graves of nearby areas with female corpses. He eventually decided to acquire fresher specimens in 1954 and killed a tavern owner named Mary Hogan. In addition, he also ventured out again when he killed a third time in 1957. This time, he claimed the life of Bernice Warden, unfortunately for Gein. Warden's son was a deputy, and he eventually tracked Gein down, and as he was the last person to be seen with his mother. Upon searching Gein's farm, they found both Warden and Hogan's body. Both were gutted, decapitated, and a very, very gruesome sight. But nothing close to the horror to come. Inside Gein's house, they found a variety of furniture, clothing, eatery, and trophies, all made out of human skin. Some examples include his famous nipple belt and skin lamp shades. In the end, Gein was a complicated case because he was originally dictated unfit for trial until 1968, when it was determined that he could participate in his own trial. In the end, he was deemed guilty but insane and sent to a mental ward for the rest of his life, where he just kind of stayed there peacefully and no one heard from him again.
Man, myth, spirit, or midget. The New Orleans Axeman is regarded as one of America's strangest serial killers, and possibly the first to have never been caught. Starting in 1918 and lasting for a period of 18 months, the Axeman would prey on the citizens of New Orleans. Local legend would describe him as a form of ghost or spirit, some kind of Cajun boogeyman, if you will. And in those 18 months, the Axeman would be responsible for 12 attacks, culminating in 6 kills. He would only use tools found in the home, such as axes or chisels. And beginning on May 23rd of 1918, the Axeman claimed his first victims, Joseph and Catherine Maggio. They were found to have been chopped up with an axe and a straight razor used on their throats. Catherine was completely decapitated, and Joseph was severely mangled. The family staying in the home at the time heard nothing out of the ordinary that night. The only clues as to the killer were the bloody axe left on the property and a note written in chalk down the street, stating, "Mrs. Maggio will sit up tonight. Just right, Mrs. Tony." Yet these leads didn't end up going anywhere. A lack of forensic evidence at the time contributed to this lack of a lead. And the Axeman would continue to strike again on June 28th, this time attacking Louis Bessemer and Anna Lowe. Both were severely injured but managed to survive. She would claim a large white man had attacked her, but later changed her story to say that Bessemer had attacked her. Police ruled Bessemer out as they thought it unlikely that he could have attacked himself with an axe. Within the next few weeks, a woman named Mrs. Ed Schneider was also attacked, but after having been found by her husband, was rushed to Charity Hospital and would end up surviving. She was actually pregnant at the time and managed to give birth just a week after the attack. Within a few days, on August 10th, another victim, an Italian grocer named Joseph Romano, was found dead, with his head smashed in. Leaving the familiar calling cards, the Axeman got in through a panel on the door and used the victim's own axe. Following this, 3 more attacks were added: Paul Lobella, Joseph Leboux, and Paul Durrell. Yet all 3 managed to survive, as the Axeman wasn't able to break in. In Paul Durrell's case, his life was saved by a carton of tomatoes blocking the panel of his door, preventing entry by the Axeman. Hysteria swept across New Orleans, with the city scrambling to bring in more police and armed watches being established within the neighborhoods. This tactic would manage to hold off the Axeman for nearly 7 months, until March 10th of 1919. Rose Cortimiglia would awaken to find her husband attempting to fight off the Axeman, until he in turn was axed. In a sad turn of events, Mr. and Mrs. Cortimiglia would recover from their wounds, but their baby daughter, Mary, would be slain. And just as before, the axe in question belonged to Mr. Cortimiglia. Following this brutal killing, a local newspaper, the Times-Picayune, received a letter, supposedly from the Axeman. Esteemed mortal, They have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not human, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood, and the brains of who I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph. But tell them to beware. Let them try not to discover who I am, for it would be better if they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need for such a warning, for I feel the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. They are wise, and know how to keep away from all the harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as the most horrible murderer, for which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I'm going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether region that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. As well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, it is about time I leave your earthly home. I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, and that it will go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that have ever existed in either fact or realm of fantasy, the Axeman. The letter was closely followed, and on the night in which he stated, New Orleans was alive with the sound of jazz. And there was even a piece written for the occasion known as the Axeman's Jazz from a local composer. And there were no murders after this day, or any other day since, and no suspects came to be.
This is the end of the video, guys. Now it's time for your discussion question.